There are pieces of metal, what used to be parts of the machine shed, stuck up on these trees.
There's some burned out cars, also smoke still coming up several hours after firefighters left.
The water was just barely touching the edge of it. It's now completely covering the road.
Here in eastern Iowa, most of our counties are in the single digits. Good afternoon, I'm Daniel Perreault, and we are breaking into programming to bring you the latest from Iowa City. When you look at the crowd at the watch party here at Perreault Arena, it's clear the scene is made of market something so much greater than just a national title game.
After months of campaigning, Iowans will gather at churches and cafeterias to cast their votes.
Advocates say there are nearly 30 different LGBTQ plus related bills. Abortion rights advocates are right now holding a rally and protest inside the rotunda at the state capitol. You can see it's a fairly large group. What has been the biggest adjustment for you over the last couple weeks as you've gotten used to living up on the International Space Station?
In space, obviously, you can use any surface as the floor.
While Lucas continues to recover here in the ICU, the Anamosa community has wrapped their arms around his family.
On the turf that I'm standing on, it's 101 degrees. The actual field that they play on is 84 degrees.
We are on Schrock Road, and I want to show this to you because this is the blowing snow that I was talking about. It's so slick out here that I can take this hockey puck and pretty much just slide it all across the parking lot.
Most of the snow out here on the top of the mountain is man-made.
Some of them look a little bit green, but most of the crops here look quite brown.
There's a lot of cleanup efforts that happened today, but there's still some debris scattered around, like that top of the tree that was toppled over there behind me. The Emergency Management Office says most of the damage is within 4 to 6 miles of where we are right now in Ridgeway. But drive around town, you'll see sheet metal up in trees, roofs ripped off, barns destroyed, and a trailer flipped over. This is what's left of the machine shed at Art Sweska's rental home, a pile of twisted metal. The heavy wind and rain threw the shed up against the house. Pieces of it ended up a quarter mile down the street.
Oh, you hear about it, but you never expect it to be yours. That's where the big shock comes in.
Next door, the church also sustained damage. Crews quickly got to work repairing the roof today. And to give you a sense of just how strong these winds are, there are pieces of metal, what used to be parts of the machine shed, stuck up on these trees.
We were sleeping, I was up in my room, and it sounded loud and rain started coming down.
Dalton Zidlicki and his family live on a farm just outside of town.
Everyone around here has never seen a trailer flipped over like that, and there's no skid marks and no mud, so it's got picked up and flipped over.
The storm destroyed one building used for cattle washing and ripped the roof right off the family's barn.
Once I seen the damage, I got really worried that if one of them was stuck in a shed or had a building on top of them, that really scared me.
All the family's cattle are okay.
All the calves are all counted, they're all counted for, they're running around, eating, drinking.
But the damaged trailer and the facilities are putting the family's participation in future cattle shows in jeopardy.
Coming into the hot months, putting them under fans, we don't have the facilities anymore, so it's really going to affect showing how we grow hair and all that daily care.
Dawn says they were actually planning to take the cattle to a show this weekend. That will no longer be happening as they try to recover from that damage. Also late this afternoon, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds issued a disaster proclamation for several counties, including where we are in Winneshiek, that allows aid to get here a little bit faster. For now, reporting live in Ridgeway, Daniel Perreault, News 7, KWWL.
It's 10 o'clock and topping our newscast tonight, the Democrats set their 2024 presidential primary calendar, Iowa out of both the top spot and the top 5. How state party leaders are reacting and why they say they might not be able to comply. Plus, after crossing the United States, that suspected Chinese spy balloon has been shot down, blown out of the sky by the United States military. Did you see that video? We have reaction from President Biden. And calls for justice and an arrest continue in Cedar Rapids over the death of Devonna Walker. All that plus weather and a jam-packed day of sports with Mark Woodley, so let's get to it. With just over 5 weeks until the Iowa caucuses, former President Trump is up by more than 30 points in the latest polls. His focus now is on shoring up support as he holds commit to caucus events like this one in Coralville tonight. The former president is hoping to turn his big lead in the polls into a big win on caucus night. Former President Donald Trump back in the Hawkeye state and looking to fire up Iowa voters.
Please get out and vote. Pretend we're 1 point behind instead of 35 points up.
Trump touting what he's done for farmers, contrasting it with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and his record on farmers and ethanol.
Nobody has ever been stronger for farmers than Donald Trump.
The former president also lashing out against Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds, who endorsed DeSantis.
And I don't blame her, because I didn't want much to do with her. We love loyalty in life, don't you think? Loyalty, like loyalty to everything.
Trump riding high off his big lead in this week's Des Moines Register NBC News Iowa poll.
When you see that, it makes you feel good. And that supersedes all of this political stuff that's going on against political opponents.
The Trump campaign is beefing up its Iowa operations with just 33 days until the Iowa caucuses.
And he's got one team working for him versus like 4 or 5 groups that are competing with each other. He's fully engaged, and his team's out there.
The Trump team working to get caucus captains in place. Nathaniel Gravonsky is one in Wayne County.
I am mobile until the 16th of January. I am traveling not only in my county, but other counties and going to rally talking to people. I will be completely mobile until the day after the caucuses.
Former President Trump has increased his presence in Iowa in recent weeks, but he's not held nearly the same number of events in the Hawkeye state as his competitors have. He'll be back in the state in less than a week when he holds another event in Waterloo on Tuesday. In Coralville, Daniel Perreault, News 7, KWWL. Fentanyl-laced drugs are becoming more common. They look legitimate. People take them without knowing exactly what's in them. It's a growing trend that's killing Iowans every day.
Part of my heart is gone. She was 19, her whole life ahead of her.
It is deadly.
We feel like a void has been put into our life that nothing will ever change.
Deceiving.
Especially with the pills and such, you don't know the dosage. You don't know if it's a real Percocet or if it's a fake Percocet with fentanyl.
And destructive.
It's so strong that if people time their usage wrong, they screw up one time, it can be deadly.
Fentanyl is tearing through Iowa communities, leaving families in grief. In early March, 19-year-old Brooklyn Bowers died of fentanyl poisoning.
The worst day of my life. To find out that my baby was gone. In a house of somebody I had no idea.
Her family says she took what she thought was Xanax. She was unaware it was laced with a lethal dose of fentanyl.
We went from the Brady Bunch to losing her. She just took a big part of our happiness with her.
In 2021, 429 Iowans died of overdoses. The Iowa Department of Health and Human Services says 83% involve fentanyl.
It's a very strong possibility if you take anything that's laced with fentanyl that you will overdose at some point.
Waterloo Police Lieutenant Rich Gerke leads the Tri-County Drug Task Force in Blackhawk and Bremer counties.
If you haven't gotten it from a pharmacist, chances are it's probably bogus. It's probably a fake pill. If someone's trying to sell you something, it's probably fentanyl laced.
In July 2021, Derek and Kathy Kidd's teenage son Sebastian took half of what he thought was a Percocet and never woke up. The kids were part of a statewide campaign raising awareness about the dangers of fentanyl.
Whether it be from trauma or from surgical pain or depression, there's a number of reasons why people choose to do this, and you just don't know what somebody else is going through.
Brooklyn's sister Ayana says her death recharted her life's course. She recently started this Facebook page.
I never really knew what my purpose was until she left, and I was like, I want to speak for the people who can't speak for themselves.
The family wants the people who gave Brooklyn that pill held responsible. Cedar Rapids police told KWWL they can't comment on the case.
There's so many places she should be right now, and the only place she is 6 feet under because of somebody else's actions.
This year, Iowa lawmakers passed a bill increasing penalties for those who manufacture, distribute, or possess fentanyl, and tripling sentences for cases involving a death and doubling the sentence for a case involving injuries. The bill also expands the availability of the life-saving drug naloxone, something Brooklyn's cousin Mariah Davis now carries with her wherever she goes.
Maybe we can't get every bad guy selling this, but what we can do is try to save the next life as somebody should have saved Brooklyn's.
For the last 66 days, Brooklyn's family has made the solemn trek up the road to her grave, sometimes multiple times a day.
I come here as much as I can to sit here with her and talk with her.
This is all we have left, is to come up here where we laid our child to rest at and talk to her.
A family left with a void, memories, and echoes of a life changed in an instant by one pill.
Our reality is this now. That drug fentanyl did this for us, and we're gonna fight to try to get it right for others, not to have what we have and to suffer like we're suffering.
In Cedar Rapids, Daniel Perreault, News 7, KWWL. A rainy day like this one last summer, this is what this intersection looked like. Drexel Avenue and Home Park Boulevard, you can see the road is flooded. Several houses around here also had sewage back up into their basements, causing several $1,000s worth of damage. So a year later, we wanted to take a look back and not just what caused it, but what's being done to prevent it from happening again.
There was water on the streets. I called my husband and I said, close that sewer back up.
Along Home Park Boulevard in Waterloo, gray skies bring trepidation.
As soon as we saw that sewage, we're like, oh no, not this again.
Lori DeVries and her neighbors are still scarred from 3 days last summer and twice a decade earlier.
And they came down quick, they came down hard and heavy, and that caused street flooding and also caused infiltration into our sewer pipes.
Of course, it got ruined. Everything got ruined in the basement and everything had to be hauled out.
From down here up, and then it probably came about halfway across the basement.
Some homes had more than a foot of raw sewage and tens of thousands of dollars in damage.
I essentially had to disinfect my basement, but then I also had to do the same thing in the garage due to the smell.
DeVries created a Facebook group rallying her neighbors to flood city council meetings.
We need a fix now.
Waste Management Operations Supervisor Brian Bowman says work to comply with the federal mandate contributed to the backup. Officials separated the sanitary and storm sewer lines at 2 locations in the area back in 2019.
We believed at the time that cross connection was operating in the reverse way based on elevations.
In late June, crews reconnected the lines. Dozens of homeowners applied for insurance claims, but DeVries says they all get the same letter back from the city,
saying that, we were not going to be reimbursed and that it was considered an act of God.
Since last fall, the city has been working on a permanent solution, a $10.8 million 3-phase project that includes increasing the size of the Highway 63 sanitary pipe.
And in addition to that, then in the Home Park area, there'll be what's called a sanitary sewer relief, so that when volumes build up in the Home Park area, it can discharge into the Highway 63 area.
And in fact, it's going to be right behind our house, right down our alley.
The project is set to go up for bid in the fall, with the first shovels hitting the dirt shortly after.
We are phase 1, and that just means so much, just knowing that it's coming sooner rather than later.
Peace of mind wise, but also property value wise, it's going to be good for everybody once we get this resolved.
It's also a bigger picture of, the people that were impacted aren't going to be living here forever. It's for the next people and the next generations.
DeVries says it won't feel real until work actually begins, but she's looking forward to worrying less about the sky and more about how to redo her basement.
I want my house back.
Bowman says a lot of houses here in this Home Park Boulevard area are older, built in either the 1920s or the 1930s, and in some cases their sump pumps or drains are connected directly to that sanitary line, which can be an issue during heavy rains because it can overload it. He says it was part of the issue from last summer, but they've asked residents to disconnect that and just have it drain out into the outdoors or their yards in order to prevent that from happening. Reporting in Waterloo, Daniel Perreault, News 7, KWWL.
Live from News 7 KWWL, we've got you covered. This is KWWL News at 10.
Good evening, I'm Daniel Perreault. We have a lot to tell you about in the weather department. From strong storms to devastating flooding in the western part of our state. Check this out. Entire towns are just about underwater. This is some video from this afternoon as those strong and severe storms rolled across eastern Iowa. This is a collection of video sent in from KWWL viewers in the Dundee, Strawberry Point, Balltown, and Owine areas.
There were many reports of low-hanging clouds and a few funnels, but we have no official reports of any tornadoes. The rain from the last 2 days triggered a flash flood warning in Alameda County. This is the scene on Shaw Street in Lansing. That's off of Highway 9. There are also landslides along Highway 26 outside of town. The city now urging people to pay attention to road closures and warnings in the area. Days of heavy rainfall are pushing rivers to record levels. This is footage on Highway 3, that's northeast of Reedland. You can see a field and pasture along Crane Creek are underwater. Rivers could potentially rise about 10 feet between now and the middle of next week. Let's take a live look outside at our conditions in eastern Iowa right now. That is up in Decorah. Obviously a bit dry right now. Much different story just a couple of hours ago as those strong and severe storms move through our area. I'm back in the Weather Center now, joined by Storm Track 7 meteorologist Danny Cassidy. Danny.
Yeah, it was a very active past couple of hours, and yeah, thankfully the damage was at a minimum. We saw there in Lansing a lot of heavy rain.
A frantic scene in the middle of the night. Authorities sounding the tornado sirens in Rock Valley to urge residents to evacuate after a levee in the area failed and water levels began rising. And when the sun rose, this was the scene. Parts of the city now just completely underwater. The city says they're still trying to rescue people from flooded homes. Rock Valley is about 1 hour north of Sioux City. The river in the area got as much as 15 inches of rain upstream over the last 3 days. The Sioux County Sheriff's Office posted this drone video online. You can't see any streets here, just trees and the roofs of dozens of homes and buildings above the water. The floodwaters are too high and swift for pickups or trucks, so first responders have had to use boats to get people out. The state is sending in helicopters. Mayor Kevin Van Otterloo says they're trying to use them to rescue people stranded on their roofs.
We were shocked by the number or amount of water that's hit us this time. We were not expecting the water to get as high as it did. It's hard to deal with that much water. It's a monumental undertaking.
We are also keeping a very close eye on the Sioux County town of Haywarden. First responders there have been evacuating parts of the community as floodwaters there continue to rise. All roads in the town of Spencer are closed because of historic flooding. Authorities are asking people to stay home. The city's sewer plant has been inundated and is currently not operable. Officials say it could be out of commission for the next day or two. Southwest Spencer is without power at this time. There have also been sporadic power outages throughout the rest of that city. Governor Kim Reynolds got in a helicopter and flew over flooded northwest Iowa communities today to get a first-hand look at that flooding. She says the rivers are above the 1993 record levels and the devastation is widespread. Reynolds says she is committing the full resources of the state and working with the federal government to help Iowans recover from the flooding. She has issued a disaster emergency proclamation for 21 counties and says she plans to request an expedited presidential disaster declaration. It has been nearly 2 years since an Iowa City church was struck by lightning and caught fire. The church was a total loss. Since then, members and supporters of the church have been working to rebuild. As KWWL's David Warrington reports, today they held a groundbreaking ceremony to kick off the construction of a brand new building.
Iowa City Church is rebuilding and preparing for a new home.
The church hopes to have their new location open by the spring of next year. Their ultimate goal is to be moved into that building by Easter. Coming up, Independence is celebrating recent renovations to the city's downtown area. Plus, we'll have much more on those rising water levels in rivers across eastern Iowa. The City of Independence is celebrating recent renovations to parts of its downtown area. The project to revitalize the downtown area and make it more attractive to visitors began several years ago. About 15 businesses were able to get grant money that paid for about 50% of those renovations. The project helped modernize buildings that were originally built in the 1800s.
The buildings themselves date back to the late 1800s. Independence had a major fire in approximately 96, and it destroyed that side of the town, of the downtown businesses. And they were built back, and basically those buildings are the exact same buildings that were built in the 1890s.
In total, that project cost $3.6 million. Today, American Legion Post 138 in Waterloo hosted a Quotes of Valor presentation ceremony. The Quotes of Valor are a lifetime award that honors veterans for their service in the military. Veterans can only receive one of these priceless quotes during their lifetime. So to come, there's good news for one town in Minnesota as flood waters start to recede, and cities in eastern Iowa continuing to keep a close eye on the rivers as the recent rain pushes river levels to rise. But first, here are your winning Powerball numbers tonight: 4, 5, 15, 32, 62, and your Powerball is 21. The Power Play multiplier is 2. There's good news tonight for business owners and residents in Cook, Minnesota. Floodwaters there are receding. Now, residents are trying to wrap their minds around what's next. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz surveyed the damage after 5 to 7 inches of rain put homes and businesses underwater. Residents are asking the governor to speed up the process of federal and state help. He says he's working on securing that funding, but he knows it won't come soon enough.
All this is grand, but you've got sewage in your basement. You have things that are ruined. You're trying to figure out where you have to live. That part is more complicated, but it is absolutely a priority.
There will be a weeks-long, potentially months-long process of assessing the damage and seeing how this disaster qualifies for certain funding. Here in eastern Iowa, several cities are keeping a very close eye on river levels this weekend. Officials in Waverly say they are preparing for flooding in the southeast part of town and other low-lying areas around the Cedar River. The city says the river will rise throughout the weekend and crest by Monday afternoon at around 14 feet. Waverly Utilities says it has now begun going door to door to tell people about possible or mandatory electric shutoffs. The city is telling people to be prepared for potential power disruptions, sandbag sewer drains to help prevent sewer backup, and be prepared to evacuate if necessary.
If you are concerned with basement flooding, it's probably going to be your main issue. As I know historically, as people have had it in their main level too. So if you've been in your property for a while and you know that is an issue with certain levels, probably start making a plan for that as well.
3 sandbagging stations have been set up in Waverly. They are at the Parks Division at 1st Avenue Southeast, Public Services on 5th Avenue Southeast, and Southeast Elementary School on 4th Street Southeast. Let's take a live look outside right now in Dubuque from the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium. National Weather Service has issued a flood warning for the Mississippi River in Dubuque starting tomorrow night. As of this morning, the river stage was 14.8 feet at the Railroad Bridge. River expected to surpass flood stage of 17 feet by Monday, potentially rise to 19.8 feet by Saturday. Let's send it over now to Storm Track 7 meteorologist Danny Cassidy for the latest on all the flooding that we're seeing across eastern Iowa, as well as the strong and severe storm that we saw blow through a little bit ago. So definitely a busy night for you there, Danny, in the weather department.
Yeah, very busy night, and it'll continue to be very busy as we monitor the flooding concerns.